Timing has got something a little wrong there, perhaps, but according to the live timing, Ryan Tveter in the 18 Veloce Esports 3 car was in the car, or has, the last time he was in the car, he was in the car for 4 hours. So that may be because they didn't declare the driver change, and therefore it's counted against his name rather than others. But I'm sure if that was genuine, race control would have already given a penalty to Ryan Tveter, who was in the car quite early on, actually. So it could also be that during the safety car period or the red flag period, it was counted a little bit too.
Well, it's very easy in that sense for some drivers not to have the name change, because of course that graphic on the screen is done manually. I'm sure, like you say, race control, I'm sure they've got that one sorted. We've got a little bit of a battle for position on screen at the moment. 1 second separates Ellison in the Team Project 1 car. That's the one that's Butler Power Motorsports. That's a team which Jimmy Broadbent drives for, along with a few others in, I think it's VLN of some description. They're doing some sort of racing around the Nordschleife. And of course, Rene Butler, the main runner of that team, does some things behind the scenes for 397, as well as doing some commentating. And he's being chased by Jan Magnussen. Now, just being in a sim race, being chased by Jan Magnussen is enough to make me go, oh my God, are you kidding me? Like,
you're dreaming.
This is AI, isn't it? It's got to be AI. Anytime I see a name like that, I'm just like, yeah, no, definitely not. But still, you know, 1.1 and a bit seconds separates those two. I see 1.1 seconds separates the 92 and 91. That's Matty Campbell and Mitchell de Jong. Separated by a very small margin for third position. That is the one that we've got on screen at the moment, I believe. Things closing up in the GTE category at various points. Looks like as we've headed past 10 hours to go, we're into single digits of hours to go. That's how I literally just like any hour god is an achievement. Everything's closing up though.
I've got a technical one for you. Thank you very much to all of you who are interacting with us on hashtag Le Mans 24 Virtual, wherever you are in the world. Some of you will be in the middle of your day. Over in Europe, we're in the middle of the night. Do let me know. I'd love to know where the weirdest place that one of our drivers, one of our fans is watching. Used to love the Le Mans 24 Hours, being able to do this in the middle of the night and finding people from all over the world, places where you really would never imagine people to be watching Le Mans 24 Hours on small islands in the Caribbean following us. So if you are out in a small island in the Caribbean, make me happy and tell me that you are. Hashtag hashtag Le Mans 24 Virtual. Matt Yellonek, who is a photographer, in fact, down under and does the WRC, he's a bit of a geek, and so from one fellow geek to another, what type of system is this being run on for each driver and team? The bonnet cam looks like it could be 4K, and it's very realistic.
As in, does he mean like what camera they're driving from, or like what system is in?
I think what system as in how powerful is your computer.
Oh my goodness, yeah, you need, in this, to be fair, you can get away with, prepare yourself guys. You can get away with some fairly lower spec, I mean, from graphics card's point of view. You can get away with something like a 970 from the video. You've got some stuff on AMD stuff in that same sort of range that will run through nicely. You do know if you want it to look decent and you want it to run well and you want it to run consistently, you definitely need to upgrade and get a mid-range to more powerful GPU. CPU-wise, you also need like a fairly comfortable one. 16 gigabytes of RAM is almost a requirement. Not really, but it's if you're not running it, you're sort of at risk. So you know, medium spec to high. You've got a lot of graphic settings that you can change in rFactor 2, but trust me, on the lower settings it looks pretty janky. But you have that customizability where you can lower the graphic settings, textures of cars. When it comes to the track, I'm not sure what the level of detail, or an LOD, is of the circuit and when it changes down when you go from high, or you've got 4 settings. You've got max, high, medium, low. And on low, on quite a lot of tracks, it will literally turn off a lot of things. So basically all of the atmosphere and stuff, so the things that are unnecessary, so the wheel, the lights and stuff around the circuit, sometimes even the entire pit lane itself, like the main pit building, you can, like those kind of things can be turned off. if you really know what you're doing with rFactor 2, you can open up what's called a JSON file. It's very boring, but it's basically just lines and lines and lines of code that you can change, and that is perfectly fine to go in there and change some of these because they're all just part of your driver profile. That's not considered cheating or anything like that. They're just part of your driver. Your things like locking frame rates and playing with detail in mirrors and stuff. And you can go through and you can literally customize all of this to make sure that your game is running as smoothly as possible. And that's the thing in this level. It's not necessarily about how good it looks when you're driving. It is about how smoothly it's running.
Lewis has been gagging to do that since the start of the 24 hours. Really so I'm bad. So glad, Matt, that you asked the question and we unleashed him to go complete geek on us. And for many, it's incredibly interesting and information. Here, though, is a bit of a race going on. Matt Campbell, the real-world Porsche Works driver, alongside Mitchell de Jong, the virtual world driver, who's been racing in the Super Cup for the World Championship on iRacing, and that is a change for position. Really unfortunate, to be honest, because right in the thick of all kinds of messy traffic with LMP2 cars coming on. But de Jong up to third then, ahead of teammate Matt Campbell, who's dropped down to fourth spot. And Matt's been really, really fast in sim racing over the last couple of months. And Porsche incredibly involved with iRacing, running and supporting the World Championship over on iRacing. But definitely a focus over the last couple of weeks on making sure Porsche wins this. And you saw that in the last round of the IMSA series on iRacing. Very little representation for Porsche there. The likes of Ayhan Guven, Nick Tandy had appeared in that championship, but they all were focusing on practicing on rFactor 2, and at the moment it's paying off because Guven is leading, and it's nearly a full lap. We're about 20 seconds away from Guven lapping the Romain Grosjean Esports Corvette that's done a very good job sitting in second position. But that will be significant because if we ever have a safety car period moving forward, Guven and that 93 car will always have that one lap advantage. Amazing stint from Guven. I need to find out how long he's been in that car, because it has been a huge mammoth effort. And unlike in other series where in the sprint races we do see mistakes from him, he raced against Larry Ten Voorde in the virtual version of the Mobil 1 Super Cup, where he made a couple of fundamental kind of silly moves that cost him the championship in the end. Guven, in the real world, a very, very fast driver, won the French Carrera Cup Championship a couple of years on the trot and is now part of the Super Cup and is a Porsche junior driver. But not hugely versed in rFactor 2, but it's working very well for him now, and a significant thing to be able to put a full lap on your nearest competitor, and that's going to happen quite soon. But in third position, Mitch de Jong now, who actually is a real-world rallycross driver, isn't he, Lewis?
Indeed.
And supported by Red Bull in that championship as an esports athlete.
Yeah, he did a little bit in the Global Rallycross Championship. Well, that was a thing back in the
now defunct.
Now defunct. It became the Americas, or well, not became. There was the new Americas Rallycross Championship, which obviously with them running the standard spec, which is effectively it's the same, as far as I'm aware, it's the same as World Rallycross Championship. Same spec of cars, so they could basically just go, well, we've got these Beetles, let's just drop these in with the Subaru and stuff. So that's where the Global Rallycross Championship, where that's come from. And a lot of those take part. First round of the America's Rallycross Championship. It's in Silverstone. Of course it was.
Yes.
That one always catches me out. Is this a battle for positions?
No, it's not. This is Jan Magnussen, who is sitting in 7th position. He's a full lap down on Matt Campbell, but they are kind of running at similar pace, and so Campbell's really struggling to get past, and that is what has allowed Mitch de Jong to already put a 4-second gap between him and his teammates. Now he's found a bit of space down the inside, only just. Interesting to see, and somebody mentioned this on Twitter, that a lot of the cars have got their rain lights flashing. There you can see on the rear end, it's not their warning light, as somebody said on Twitter. It is their rain light. I'm not quite sure why their rain light will be on. You can see the Corvette doesn't have it, but the Porsches do. And now, finally, Matt Campbell has got past that Corvette, and he can set about trying to chase down de Jong. Interesting to see if he can match de Jong's pace. But looking at the pace of Ayhancan Guven, his best lap, 10-lap average is a 3:49.9, as opposed to what we're seeing from Mitchell de Jong right now. And de Jong is managing, keep going down my list. Gosh, he's quite a long way down the list. Where is he? Hang on, talk amongst yourselves for a second.
Yeah, you've got a lot of data there to to head through. I did notice that the Team Project 1 car, by the way, the one that we saw battling with Jan Magnussen, has been in the pit lane. Tim Neuendorf has taken over that one. He's a sim racer, maybe not necessarily the fastest, but has taken part for Butler Powell in some other things. So he's joined that outfit of Team Project 1 for this race, obviously after that pit stop. About a minute and 20 or so off of Jan Magnussen's. That's relieved any pressure from behind. And I've got to say, Magnussen's pace at the moment is very, very impressive. He's been taking some tips, of course, from Dennis Lind, who Lamborghini factory driver, helping him out at the moment. I have heard some things from Jan Magnussen complaining that Dennis Lind, his nephew, is too fast. He's too fast. He's just too quick in these sims.
He is very, very fast. Although he's he is actually very fast on R Factor 2. He's got a lot of sim racing experience doing long distance races on R Factor 2, having to be pushed towards other platforms thanks to his contractual agreements with Lamborghini and in GT3, and GT3 simulated very well with a different platform, ACC. But really, his bread and butter for many, many years before he actually became a Lamborghini Trofeo World Champion back a couple of years ago was racing on this platform in endurance races. Going back to that thought I was having about lap times, Guven, his best 10 average is a 3:49.959. Mitchell de Jong is doing a 3:50.6, and then Matt Campbell is even further down our list, and he is doing a 51.859 as a 10-lap average. So actually 1 second difference between each of those drivers, and Campbell therefore is going to lose a lot of time to Mitchell de Jong, although de Jong now in pit lane along with Guven. So will we see a different driver in that car? Because Guven, I think on this last stint, has done 1 hour 47. So I think we may see somebody take over from Ayhancan Guven. And in that roster, Nick Tandy, Josh Rogers and Tommy Usgaard. I'll have any of them, please, because they're all awesome.
That's such a good point with that lot. So where is Nick Tandy based at the moment?
In England.
So are they all based in Europe?
Yes, let me have a look.
Because obviously Josh Rogers, who's Australian, he's now resides in Germany.
Yep.
The Coanda, since they've got a house basically, and he's in there. If you ever see an interview or an onboard with him, everything is purple. It's Coanda. Yeah. But yeah, if they're all in Europe, there's no one really that can do it in sequence of their actual, normal life schedule. They've got to all go off sequence at some point.
Yeah, so in that Coanda house, if you like, Matt Backham is there, Josh Rogers is there, David Williams is there, but interestingly so is Ayhancan Guven. So Guven's gone over to race at the house. In a different sim, they're all in different sims, they're not sharing the same sims, but they are all in the same house in Grunau in Germany, and that is the kind of the headquarters of the Coanda SimSport team. And we see that a lot in esports, in other things like League of Legends, having houses for their teams. But interesting to see Coanda have gone that direction. Very important for Josh Rogers to kind of focus his sim racing career, if you like, by moving to Europe and putting himself on a better time zone for all these races, because he was Australian and did the first season of the World Championship, the Esports Super Cup, from Australia, but it meant that he was always racing throughout the middle of the night. And I think he won the championship, and he said that the race finished at kind of 5 in the morning. And so what a very weird thing to have just won 100,000 I think $100,000.
Something in that vein, yeah.
And have won the most prestigious championship perhaps in the world, and you don't have anybody to celebrate with. He said he was on Discord for a while chatting with people, but a weird kind of middle of the night feeling to finish a race at that time. So that's why he decided to focus his career by moving to Europe to get himself back on the time zone, and also be surrounded by this atmosphere with Matt Backham and David Williams, constantly practicing, constantly putting in the hours and working alongside the likes of Porsche to get their guys up to speed, as well as getting the Coanda team up to speed in all the various championships that they enter. And of course, lots of focus will be on the 24 hours that's running next weekend on a different platform on iRacing. But they'll be focusing purely down to the fact that they are representing Porsche. Very much also the work has been going into this weekend, and even to the extent that Porsche moved their schedule to allow this 24-hour race to happen unobstructed, so they could put all of their efforts onto this and then focus back on the Super Cup, which was rescheduled for next weekend.
Yeah, I mean, for some stuff, like you say, there's a week to prepare for all of that stuff. You've got this to focus on now, and this has been on the minds of teams for a long time prior to this. Guerrieri is back in the pits. Is that? Oh yeah, you did. Yeah, you said earlier that is in sequence because he's off sequence with everyone else. So Guerrieri for Bicolis Burst Esports behind this, 1 minute 14 seconds off of the leader when he came into the pit lane. So he's dropped off now. And will potentially drop behind Isaac Price again. We might just be able to stay in front of the Rebellion Williams Esports car. And to be fair, Isaac Price, he's taken part in a lot of things. He's not really a proper R Factor 2 driver, does some things. Jone Simoncic, speaking of R Factor 2 drivers, takes over the Bicolis Burst Esports car. He was the one who had pole position in this category. He's up very early. He's kind of getting used to this though, considering he's done his fair share of endurance racing. A previous last year, rather, he was the season 11 champion of the Virtual Endurance Championship with Sim Racing Club, at the head of that, and won that championship. Was in championship contention going into the last round last week. And they really struggled. And I think that was because there was so much focus on making sure that this goes right. And now they've had a massive issue with yes, Pedersen, those of you that were here earlier in the race, coming out of Corvette. I think it was a wheel disconnection. I haven't had that confirmed, but I think it was a wheel disconnection. And basically, coming out of Corvette, his wheel was effectively locked in-game to 45 degrees. He had to reconnect the wheel. He would have no force feedback, so he had to come into the pit lane, hand over straight away to someone else, and then get on with it. To say they are still on the lead lap, that they've just pitted, and they're within 3 minutes as well. Like, mighty impressive stuff. And now they've just handed over to Mr. R Factor 2 at the moment, more of an open wheel specialist. That car should be about to go monstrously quick.
Pit stop sequence for those that are off sequence happening right now. And then in a couple of laps time, when we click onto the 10s, so 299, 229 and 230 will be our next proper pit stop. Good to see the Goodyear branding around the circuit. Goodyear getting back involved with the WEC and Le Mans in the future, and in fact getting involved heavily around the world of motorsport. We're seeing Goodyear that disappeared for a couple of years. I grew up with Goodyear in Formula One, so it's really cool to have Goodyear as a tyre brand getting back involved in all these forms of motorsport when others have kind of done what they needed to do and disappeared to do and focus on other things.
Yeah, I commentate on a different championship which happens on Sunday evenings. And Skip Barber's, again, Goodyear tyres in that. Like, it is nice to see that sort of resurgence. Of course, they've had stuff over in America, you know, obviously keeping in NASCAR for God knows how long. But now they are coming back into motorsport properly, and it's brilliant to see. And it's kind of what we want, you know, to see more tyre manufacturers really taking part and getting stuck in.
It's kind of evocative, isn't it? You know, certainly for different generations it does mean different things, but Goodyear was such that yellow branding on the side of the tyres in the early 90s Formula One cars. It creates a certain emotion inside me, because that's my kind of upbringing in Formula One. And so to see that same branding back again just brings an extra kind of sensation, an extra feeling to myself personally. It might not necessarily relate to some others, but certainly to me, it's a cool thing to see.
Well, we've had this conversation on Discord with various people over the years. It's kind of your almost like your preferred era of motorsport is that first one that you watch. So those first couple of years that you join the motorsport community, as it were, those are the ones that kind of like hold in your mind. Whether you joined in. Unfortunately, guys, I joined in 2012, so I've not experienced a lot of this like with everyone else. That was when I first started watching motorsport and then joined sim racing and
Where
such.
were you? 2012?
Yeah,
what were you doing before then?
I know. I was on BBC iPlayer and I was like, there's some highlights of the Australian. I'll watch that. And before that, I remember the 2003 Malaysian Grand Prix, and that's it. And I remember thinking that I was 8 years old, and I remember thinking, my dad's woken up at 6 o'clock in the morning. What a boring guy.
Oh, really?
And now it's just like, I'll stay up all night and watch it.
So your dad didn't force you into it. You literally kind of slowly adapted to what
exactly.
the lad and dad thing didn't kind of happen as you must sit and watch these things.
No, absolutely not.
Brilliant.
Absolutely not. Now though, I can sit down with my dad and we'll watch a Grand Prix or something. He's not really into anything outside of Formula One, but as to my point though, so that kind of era is sort of where like I would go back to and think, wow, what about this? What about that? And you kind of hold on to that, and you hold that for ages. So obviously, a lot of people that joined Formula One and that sort of era of motorsport in the early 2000s, they always think, wow, the V10, the all this, let's go back to that. So it makes sense that you go back to Goodyear if that's where you joined motorsport, as it were.
Yeah, absolutely. And then obviously early memories of going to, I think my first Le Mans was 2010, and I got a puncture on the way down. Always drive to Le Mans from the south of England. Always fantastic kind of spirit driving down to Le Mans, and got a puncture on my very first one. Just a couple of mates going to sit in a campsite and enjoy it. Didn't have any work to do at that point. Wasn't really very much involved in didn't have the ability to work. Knew a few people, but sat in the campsite, drank beer, and enjoyed watching motorsport happen. Did a bit of a tour of the circuit, even went and sat in a ditch somewhere down the Mulsanne Straight to really get a good perspective, and some secret spots that definitely we weren't allowed to be in, but worked out well. And then ever since then, I don't think I've missed one. I think I may have missed one for other reasons in terms of work. I missed last year actually because of work in another championship. But from just being a fan and sitting in the campsite and enjoying it like so many of you will have done, actually one of my best memories of Le Mans is just doing that, hanging out with mates, having a beer, and really soaking it up. Another year, just did a little behind-the-scenes video for a camping company. That was a very memorable experience. Had a horrible hangover on Monday morning and ran my battery out in my car park because I plugged the phone in, run out of battery. Of course, anybody who's been to Le Mans will know that the phone is constantly searching for reception and therefore runs out of battery very quickly. Got to Sunday night, plugged it into the car, but had passed out before I was able to turn off the car. So both battery in phone and battery in car had run out by the time I actually woke up, and that meant a difficult run back to the UK. And I think actually that was the year that I got stopped twice by the police for speeding. Even though I was never speeding. I know that many of you will have had that situation, especially if you do the Route Nationale back from Le Mans to Calais. Somehow the police are able to kind of make up the speed that you're doing, and depending on what car you're driving, and of course many a nice car does do the trip. I was in a 350Z, Nismo kitted 350Z, which had run out of fuel on the way down and then got stopped by the police twice and fined twice. But of course, they take your passport to check your details, and they won't give it back until you give the cash.
Really?
And yeah.
We'll hope that doesn't happen later today, because we're driving back today.
Yeah, you guys. Luckily, the police won't necessarily be quite as
out on forward.
They won't be quite as out there. They're all too busy anyway in Paris.
Yeah.
Stopping all the protests or protesting themselves. But certainly, when the Le Mans comes to town, and the roads around Le Mans, and then the route to Le Mans, all the police know. They all know that it's that Le Mans weekend, and there will be hundreds of thousands. Nearly half of the people that go to Le Mans are Brits driving from the UK to Le Mans. There are more British fans at Le Mans than there are French fans.
Really?
And the next country, thanks to Tom Christensen over the last couple of years, has been Denmark. So British fans, 100, 120,000 British fans, about 50 to 60,000 Danish fans. The French, I actually have relations in Le Mans who have never been to the race, who live in Le Mans and know about it, and it's obviously very much part of it, but they've never been. And in fact, they work in cars, which I just find a bit weird, to be honest.
That is a bit odd. I know a few friends that have driven down to Le Mans. My housemate, in fact, he drives down there whenever he can. Has taken Jimmy Broadbent down there every once in a while, and it's apparently a very nice road trip. The thing is, though, is when you do go on a road trip, you need to make sure your car's in order, because not to Le Mans, but
anywhere.
Yeah,
anywhere.
Anyway, Cameron Roger, who's probably asleep, very fast asleep, but I'm sure someone will link him to this at some point. President of Formula Sim Racing, he decided it was a good idea to take his car all the way to a place called Viborg in Denmark. Now that, from the south of the UK, I had to drive into Germany to pick someone up from there and then drive all the way up into Denmark. It's about, I think it was 12, 13 hours, something like that. It gets to half an hour away, and the alternator fails in the car. And it's like, oh good. So that then has to go into a garage. That's going to cost an arm and a leg. It was a BMW 5 Series, I think it was. So it wasn't exactly the cheapest fix. So my advice, if you're going to go on a road trip to somewhere, it's a great thing to do, but please take a car that can actually do the distance.
Yeah, I've run out of fuel a couple of times. I've had to get a wheel changed in Le Mans because it didn't have any grip on it. I've run out of batteries at Le Mans. Every year there's a story, and that's what makes Le Mans so great. For the competitors that go there, it's nearly 2 weeks basically with Le Mans test day the week before. We don't have Le Mans test day this year because of the compact schedule to get that race in September. So it won't be quite as long of an event, but who knows about kind of the Parade de Pilote through Le Mans town as well. But so much of that is so important to the atmosphere of the event, and there's always a story from every single year, from every single event, and it's just one of those things, just a weird thing to go to what is a pretty, I mean, it's a big industrial town, but it's relatively sleepy. Been through Arnage in the middle of April, and it's dead, and yet you're there on that Le Mans weekend, and it is mental with British fans. The restaurants have tripled in size. They make all of their money from the Le Mans weekend and basically take the rest of the year on holiday because they don't really need to push too hard. If you've never been and you've got the ability to get to the Le Mans 24 hours, make sure you do it once in your life. Make sure you do it with a couple of mates. Go and camp, do it properly. And I really would love to do it in that way again. And if I somehow never have a job at Le Mans, then that is definitely the choice that I would make. I do know a couple of cameraman friends who, the years where they don't have jobs at Le Mans, they still go anyway and just have a great time. Yeah, on board with Felix Rosenquist in the Jota Team Red Line machine. He's 14 seconds back from Tristan Vautier, who is in the Panis Racing AAA car, and that will be a battle for 6th position. To update you also on the driver changes down in GTE, we saw pit stops coming through. Mitch de Jong stayed in the car, but he's dropped down to 5th position. Josh Rogers has taken over from Ayachan Guven, and Josh was the man who set the time in that 93 to grab pole position. They weren't starring in the early running of this race, but at the moment it's all running smoothly for 93, and Rogers will now bring that car into the early morning. Presumably Nick Tandy's having a nice sleep with his wife and kids there, and has been ordered that he's not allowed to necessarily race at certain times. I did get a tweet from Richard Westbrook's wife. Now, Richard Westbrook, I don't think is... Yes, he is in this, racing for Aston Martin, although I don't think we've seen him. And she was saying she's been banned from watching anything on the internet for the weekend. So that's a bit frustrating. However, the sim is in the utility room, and therefore she can't do the washing either. So that's a plus point. Yeah. Great to hear from Jess. And Jess is a lovely... she's a big key player, actually, at Toyota's corporate hospitality at the Le Mans 24 Hours too. So a big hello to Jess, although you'll be fast asleep, so you won't be listening to this. Look forward to seeing Richard Westbrook in the Aston at some point. Not sure. I certainly haven't seen him out as yet.
He did a little bit earlier.
He did a little bit earlier, yeah, okay.
But it is actually a very good point on the sense of when you're sat at home, obviously you go to the racetrack, you think, right, we've got the weekend lads, let's set the timers, we'll all be in the car when we're in the car, and it's fine. Whereas at home, you have to think of when you're in the car because of your neighbours, because of your housemates, whatever, who you're sharing with, of course, wife, kids, etc. I had a conversation whilst he was in the car last week with Mike Epps, who's in 19th position. I've also been told he's desperate for an interview at some point through the day.
Of course he is.
He's done. He said. Well, I can't remember what the quote was. Apparently, he's spent 20 minutes setting up his lights and stuff, so it's all perfect for an interview. He's a good lad. But I had an interview with him whilst he was in the car, and he said he's got to be careful not to hit a curb too hard, because he's got a direct drive wheel and he's got neighbours and there's not very thick walls. So if he hits a curb, it is currently 4:30 in the morning in the UK. If he hits a curb in that and the wheel goes mad, or he gets in a crash and all that, he's waking someone up. And you've got to think about that kind of stuff when you're racing in this environment.
Yeah, all they hear, you've obviously immersed in your world with the sound and the vision, but all they hear is a squeak from the pedals every so often, and then the direct drive fan or indeed cogs all going crazy.
Speaking of squeaky pedals, I think the worst the worst squeaky pedals nearly went on there, didn't he? The worst squeaky pedals, Rory McDuff, every time he lifts off the throttle, you could just hear this really high-pitched squeak, and it's like, get some grease on that or something, because it is like, you got your headset on, you can't hear it. I feel bad for his mum, who's in the living room. Yeah. Every sort of 10-15 squeak. Oh my God, sort it out.
Kendrick on Twitter asks, any particular reason why LMP1 is not being used?
So we don't have LMP1 in R Factor 2 as official content.
Easy answer.
It is pretty simple. The more complicated one is we don't actually have I don't think we've got the way to properly simulate it in R Factor 2 with the hybrid system and stuff. Yeah. It would be effectively a basic system like it is with the you've got your throttle and brake. You can. I think you can simulate turbos and stuff in R Factor 2, but that's really as far as it gets. You can't simulate a hybrid system, as far as I'm aware, in its present form in R Factor 2. Certainly not with all the gizmos and of turning your power up. And have you ever driven with a car like that?
So much to do.
It's too much. I can't do it. Yeah, I cannot do it. I mean, Peter Berliak, who's in this race, I raced. I replaced him for one round because he couldn't do it in an open wheel championship. And the only thing we had to change in that was fuel mixture. And he was like, yeah, just you're not changing the fuel mixture enough. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, you only change like twice or 3 times a lap. I was like, yeah. And he's like, you've got to be changing it into every corner. And I was like, no, impossible. And then with the hybrid system, it's fuel mixture and hybrid and boost mode, and when it goes out and how much you're regenning and how I don't have that many buttons.
Exactly. And that's a very easy answer there for you, Kendrick. It is It's nice to have all these LMP2s as the same model, because you've got in GTE, of course, we've got works teams, so they're never going to be happy with driving other models of car, you know, and therefore we wouldn't have had the likes of Ferrari, we wouldn't have had the likes of Corvette or Porsche if they were forced to drive a generic machine. LMP is a different story, and of course we have Toyota as a works team as part of this, because the platform, the Oracle that we've got in this game is kind of a generic platform, so it looks like an LMP, and Toyota can therefore kind of put their colours on, and it looks pretty good. So we've got the works Toyota team in LMP, but then in terms of GTE, we had to have the actual GTE cars that are on offer as legit content. And as Martin's already spoken about quite a lot, the Ferrari built specifically for this event to get Ferrari onto the grid, and just a bit of a shame that they're not really showing.
Yeah, they've not really got the car to fight today. We just saw there, Jenson Button is behind the wheel here of the Team Rocket Zancho. Nearly, very, very nearly, the orange LMP behind it, the IDEX Sport Racing one of Colapinto, very nearly brushed off the back of Jenson Button's Team Rocket Zancho car. I'm sure Ed Trevelyan Johnson's asleep now, so he's not really paying much attention, so you can say whatever you want, particularly about Shane van Gisbergen. He's a very big Shane van Gisbergen fan, so if you want to slam Shane van Gisbergen, now's the time. But that was so close. And the thing is, into that corner, you take a bit of hit on the rear, you're going straight into the gravel trap, potentially all the way out to the wall. So Jenson's a bit of a lucky boy there.
And shout out also to Jenson, who since his first stint announced that he will be having a baby girl in a couple of months' time. So already with one baby over in LA, and congratulations to Jenson for announcing a second baby on the way. I can't believe that he got his Le Mans 24 Hours underway, did a couple of stints, and then just casually went onto social media and announced that he's going to have another baby. Fantastic. He's over in LA, and so a little bit of a kinder time zone for him over the rest of his team that basically are all, I think, in the UK. Going to check that information. You've got Alex Buncombe in Taunton, Matt Richards in Pontypool, and Jan van Heiders in Germany. So yeah, LA is the place to be for Jenson, and he'll be bringing that car into the morning, I guess, and then the guys in Europe can take over again without being affected too badly by sleep deprivation, which of course is a huge thing at Le Mans when everybody's in the same place, but is a little bit less of an effect when you've got everybody spread around the world, and you can play with that and use that cleverly to your advantage so that drivers aren't driving too fatigued. Although I did see Andrea Lotterer on Instagram. He's doing quite a lot of Instagramming, if you're interested, talking about his experience after his triple stint. Number one, he looked knackered. He said his eyes were super sore, and he did really look, you know, physically he wasn't sweating, and he didn't look like he'd gone and done a workout, but you could tell that his brain and his eyes really had done a massive workout.
Yeah, it really is. It's very much a mental game in this, and it is hard to keep track of. By the way, Ed said, "Who is asleep? Stop talking about Shane right now." So we're not allowed to do that yet. That's a later game. It is very mentally exhausting. I mean, to be fair, on direct drive wars, it can be very physically exhausting for your arms and stuff. But of course, with the pro drivers and stuff. Actually, you know, this is actually a very good point, because we were talking about this with Alan McNish. He was saying, and with Martin Haven, of course. They were basically saying that some of the pro drivers might actually have an advantage at this point, in the sense of they've got all their, you know, the nutrition, they've got all of the workouts and stuff like. Of course, some of the sim drivers are as well, but let's be honest, most of them, much like me, are sat in their room 24/7 and barely leave to even go to the shops. So muscles, not really a thing that we have. So for the sim drivers, like at this point, they'll be maybe a little bit more tired than some of the actual pros. This is a replay, skipping across. That's the Axel Motorsports car. Goes hard right through the Porsche curves and into the barrier. Loses a rear wing. Thankfully, doesn't collect anyone else, and is able to keep going. But that
And
that's a off.
That's sim driver Mika Hakimi as well. So in that car, we've seen Mohamed Naquib have a bit of an off earlier doors. Mika Hakimi also, the other sim driver in that team, just having an off there. And Alex Young and Alistair Young, relatively calm stints. They are struggling, that full team from Malaysia, and certainly at the other end of the timing screens, 25th out of 27 runners in LMP. Team Penske still running. Simon Pagenaud is in that car now. He's just come out of the track onto track. He's done a lot of work, Simon, for the Team Penske machine, and he's got his rig #1 back up and running after his issues with it and his kind of rig change that we saw live. But lots of pit stops happening right now. So Marchello now, Rafael Marchello is in Rebellion #1, the lead car. And he will have Romandis in the 13 chasing him down. The gap between those two, and I need to confirm this, looks to have gone down to 38 seconds. It was up to nearly a minute. So some time lost there in the last part of the stint. And then we've got Simoncic in 3rd position, but off sequence. McDuff now is ahead of Isaac Price. I don't think we saw that on screen.
I think that was in pit stops.
And it has, yeah, it has kind of cycled through in pit stops. But McDuff in the 2Cs Motorsport was chasing down Isaac Price in the 3 Rebellion, and that now has changed. Price is 1.6 seconds behind, I think, Rory McDuff right now. And I would be surprised if Isaac has an answer to McDuff's pace.
Yeah, I mean, Rory McDuff is an R-Factor 2 specialist, Isaac Price not so much, but they're both incredibly quick. We'll see if that gap does close up. Isaac Ellison, who was the Project Cars world champion of some description a little while ago, has done some stuff in Race Room as well, nearly qualified for the ADAC GT Masters Esports Championship. In fact, in the qualifiers, it was the top 5 that get through, and he scored the exact same points as the driver that was 5th in that, but because he didn't have a high finish, he was unfortunately effectively booted out of that one. But he's very quick at learning. We're on board with one of the Ferraris at the moment, coming up to lap Robert Wickens as well. Saw a bit of the flash. Of course, that's one thing that they can have in R-Factor 2. You can turn your lights on and off. Although, with your point earlier, as the 2Cs cars comes through, you'll see Isaac Price as well, not too far behind this. Rory McDuff picks up the Ferrari, does the Aston Martin in the middle of the Porsche curves. Woo-hoo-hoo! That was close. Robert Wickens then goes off the road. And there goes Isaac Price round the outside, down the inside of the Aston Martin into to Corvette. Nice stuff. That was, I think, a little bit of a gain from Isaac Price in traffic. But with your point, you can't run third-party applications.
Oh yeah.
As far as I'm aware, which means that there's some applications which you can use, which will basically map as a macro, as a way that it would basically automatically turn your lights on and off. You don't have the ability to effectively burst via the light. So you only, every time you press it, you have to on, off, on, off, on, off. And the amount of times that I have seen people do that and then leave the light off and then start driving around thinking, oh, it's a bit dark, isn't it?
We have potentially an issue for the 38 Jota Team Redline car. Felix Rosenquist doing his first stints in that machine from Carmel in Indiana, obviously over there for the resumption of the IndyCar Championship, their first race last weekend in Texas. Rosenquist right at the head of the field and attributing his performance on ovals partly to Dario Franchitti, but also to his experiences racing ovals on iRacing during lockdown. So Felix Rosenquist very, very complimentary about keeping sharp thanks to sim racing. But the car is on our timing screens as stopped in sector 3, and he is dropping down the leaderboard.
As far as I've been told, he has disconnected.
Oh.
Now, as to why, whether that's his personal issue or whether something else has happened, game crash or whatnot, either way, that is why he's dropping down. The car is, as much as if you're looking at the live timing, you'll see the word stop. That's actually a disconnection from Felix Rosenquist at the moment.
Yeah, it's obviously the live timing that we look at is programmed for real-world racing, so disconnect is not something that happens, but stop is the way that our live timing picks up the data from the rFactor 2 platform and sticks it into that timing. But that is a bit of a disaster. He's now in pit lane, so that does mean that he's reconnected, but he's dropped to 14th position, and now he's behind Uusijukala in the 37 Jota team. It's really not gone well for Redline. Redline, for me, the team in sim racing. We've got one car totally out of the race due to various technical issues, and now Rosenquist with issues in the 38. The 37 has certainly not had a clean run of things either. Dominic Farber ending up in the back end of another car after it was moving around and a bit unpredictable in front of him and having a major accident. And so I would have loved to have seen a Redline win here, because Redline are so responsible for some of the most professional moves that sim racing has done over the years and is all about combining real and virtual. Felix Rosenquist is a team Redline driver. Yes, he races in the real world in IndyCar and he has contracts with various people there, but in the sim racing world, he is a team Redline driver, like Max Verstappen, like Lando Norris, like so many other drivers on the roster of Team Redline. And it just would make sense to me to have Redline as the guys that took victory because of their responsibility over the last, 20-odd years in promoting sim racing at the highest level, in making it as professional as possible, but it's just not been working out for them.
No, and to that point, now the highest Team Redline car in the race at the moment, I believe, is 13th place, the number 37 Jota Team Redline car, Alexei Uusijukala, behind the wheel of that. We, me and Chris, prior to this, we went through and we picked some of the teams that we thought were going to be up for victory, that were going to be there or thereabouts, either as a dark horse or as very much a main contender. The overwhelming favourite coming into this was the number 20. That's the one with Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, of course, alongside those, that's Kirchhoff and Gregor Hutu. That car, though, that Felix Rosenquist is behind, along with Antonio Felix da Costa, and then two of sim racing's greatest. The very first was fastest gamer, Rudy Van Buren, who works, or I'm sure he works in some degree with McLaren in their simulator. He won that as effectively as a job in that. And then the most recent winner of McLaren's World's Fastest Gamer, as well as basically everything else. Kevin Siggy Rebanak, who's Slovenian. He's done an awful lot, obviously winning the Formula E Race at Home Challenge, and so a test in one of their cars. Definitely were one of the favourites to do something good here, and now through a technical fault, miles off, they're going to be 3 laps down by the time they properly get the laps ticking off again. And I kind of feel that that's at least for the most part curtains for them.
Thank you to all of you getting in touch on hashtag Le Mans 24. Thank you for keeping us company through the early hours of our European morning, and well done if you've been up with us throughout the full 24-hour race. Anything can still happen. 9 hours still remaining. So much racing still to go. And Philip Pond asking, with it starting to get light on the virtual circuit and drivers having been raced for nearly 15 hours now, how much do you think mental fatigue will be affecting them in the coming hours? Mentally, sim racing is harder than the real world. I stand by that. It may not be physically harder. You don't obviously feel the G-forces. Some people will be in motion rigs and be rattling around, but mentally, Lewis, your brain and your eyes have to do so much more that surely mental fatigue coming into the last part of the race for those that have done a lot is going to be a factor.
Absolutely. The thing is, when you're not a part of the car, that's the thing, that in motorsport you're strapped in, you're very, very tight, and you're a part of the whole beast. In sim racing, you don't have that, and with that, you really have to rely on all of your other senses, what's happening with your hands, and realistically what's happening with your eyes. And you just have to be very careful where you're looking, and like that. Over time, you're staring at a screen that's very close. It is exhausting mentally. You've got a lot to think about. Like, just because it's a game, believe me, it's still a sweaty environment, and it's a lot of brain power. Most of that comes down to how much you're thinking, and you're juggling all these numbers in your head. You almost don't have as many distractions, even though you have more distractions. It's entirely different in that sense. So you're absolutely right that fatigue at this point is going to be a big thing, and that's why I said about the pro drivers at this point. Like, they might be in a better situation because they've gone through all of the routines, all of the training and stuff, and they've gone through that through most of their careers in certain cases. The sim drivers have had mum bringing in a plate of biscuits at some point during the race. like that's really it.
Ben Pierce asks, and thank you for all your questions, Ben, because I've been seeing you've been with us a lot. When the sun comes up, how will the glare be? It was pretty bad when the sun went down, and I feel, personally, it's worse in the virtual world than it is in the real, because your eyes don't adapt in the same way that they do in the real world when there is sun coming in through the windscreen.
Yeah, it's it's going to be bad. There are some obviously sim drivers out there. This was always my stint. I always had to do the dawn and dusk, and trust me, it was hard when I did it back in 2015. It is harder now with the increase on the visuals and stuff that 397 have put out there for R-Factor 2. The game, the company developing it, they've gone through a lot of work to increase the visual. Particularly recently, they have done some very, very nice things with the lighting engine. When that comes up, it is for me. I do photography in R-Factor 2, and trust me, the light when you get to the sun rising. It looks amazing. The way it's bouncing off the cars, it just feels right. Once it starts really creeping up over the horizon, the game looks beautiful. And as a driver, you think, wow, this looks really good. And you'll also think, was that the 100-meter board that I've just gone by?
and talking about mental fatigue, going back to that, that's exactly what, when your brain starts to be distracted and starts kind of fading, and especially on these long straights here at Le Mans, you do have actually the ability to start thinking about something else, and it's so easy to miss those braking points because there isn't a huge amount to do in this first part of the lap. The second part of the lap, you can be fully focused, but because of these long straights, it's so easy, and in a GT car especially being slightly slower, to just pick out those braking points. I wish we had Alan McNish with us right now. He's getting his beauty sleep, but he would have so many stories about this moment at Le Mans, and so many of you online saying that this is your favorite part of Le Mans, that sun coming up, the smell of barbecues and fireworks still lingering in the heavy morning dew, and the light, the orange light starting to illuminate, and the knowledge that you've gone through the night, you've got past that difficult point, and it's only going to be light from now on in, but you've still got a huge amount of racing to go. And I was actually very lucky to do a 24-hour race in the real world. Okay, I was driving a Citroen C1, so it was not very fast, but I was very, very lucky to do this stint, and there's a huge amount of elation, I suppose is the word, knowing that you've got through the difficult bit of the night, knowing that the vision is coming back to you, but at the same time, it is an emotion because you're so tired as well. So everything is so heightened. And when we get Alan back in the studio in a few hours' time, when the full production team arrive back in the studio at 8:30, and we'll get our interviews back and we'll get our cutaways back, we'll have to ask him a little bit about those memories, because it's just absolutely amazing. Veronica R tweets from Argentina. Where is the limit of this virtual race? It's a race. It's iconic. It's wonderful. Le Mans 24 hours is not virtual. Le Mans 24 hours is Le Mans. I hope we clip that one up.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that would be beautiful.
That'd be very. Well, it's a shame you did that when the production team was in. They'll be, oh, all right, let's clip that for later.
Someone
we'll
in Motorsport Games, I'm sure will tweet that for later. They've already tried to embarrass me with me telling Chris to go to bed, and Chris going, "Thanks, Dad."
Yeah, I'm the guy that drops thanks, Dad, as well. So be on your best behaviour.
Our dad of the group, Martin, our grandfather of the group, Martin, getting his beauty sleep properly. Normally, he doesn't have a chance to do that because he done a double bubble at Le Mans, and whenever he's not on one channel, he's on something else, and he just punishes himself when he goes to Le Mans week. But I gave him a nice long sleep period.
You did very nicely on the
because he gets so grumpy. And if you've got a grumpy Martin Haven, then the day will be a long one.
Is this why you're bailing, like, as soon as the race is done? Because this is the thing, is that a lot of us, obviously, we're all going back to dinner and everything, and we were having a conversation at dinner. I was like, so what are we doing after? It's like, going home. I think Martin's staying here until Monday.
Well, he has to, because the train doesn't travel. That's the problem.
So is that why you're bailing ASAP?
Yeah, I don't want to hang around.
Not grumpy, Mark. Gotcha. I'll write that down because that's a good note.
As partners in crime on the World Touring Car Championship back in the day, I've spent many an evening with Martin Haven, and actually Louise Beckett, who's the pit reporter for the WEC, was part of our team for many years. Got so many stories of when Martin is a little bit tired and a little bit grumpy, and restaurants in the evening. And it's so funny how he can stick by certain stories that are blatantly not true. But Martin is always correct. And it's lovely to be working with him, actually. We don't get a chance to do it very often. So really, really cool to have him on the team. And to be describing a virtual race, although, to be honest, it's just a race. And it's just fantastic and wonderful. And there's nothing really that virtual about this apart from the platform. What's Jimmy's saying?
It's the cars aren't real, the track's not real, but the racing is.
Very good.
It is very, very good. Very apt point. We're on board with Dennis Jordan here in the number 46. Jan Opmeer just come up with a stop on my live timing, whether that's legit or not. It's just changed back to Isaac Ellison, so I don't know if there's just confusion on the live timing or whether he's just come into the pit lane. That's not for position what Dennis Jordan's just done there. That's just a bit of lap traffic getting out of the way. Not driving on his own rig is Dennis Jordan, and a few of the teams out there are not driving on their own rig, which obviously will throw out a few things of things aren't exactly comfortable. I'm not used to how this is. I'm not used to the different resolution, the different graphic settings, the different wheel, the different everything, and all of those things make a massive difference. Dennis is a quality driver. I remember back in 2016 when he wasn't, and me and him battling for 14th place in a race at Australia at Albert Park.
Claim to fame.
Exactly. I raced with him before he was good. To be fair, I've raced with quite a few of these drivers before they were good, so I knew when most of these guys were rubbish.
I do some of that. I do that with my old karting mates. I'm better than you. Jolyon Palmer, Formula One driver. Smashed him in karting. Easy peasy.
Yeah, I do the same thing. I beat Rudy Van Buren to a podium in 2016 in ITC. All the time, just like, I don't really care if he was on like 60 kilos more than I was because he won the previous race.
And every dog has his day, right? Yeah. Every dog has his day. I was racing with Adam Christodoulou on last Tuesday, and I was on pace with him for about 3 laps until I binned it.
I was going to say, then what happened? To be fair, that is actually a very common thing in sim racing, to kind of reach 100% and keep it 100%. There are not many drivers that can rip off a lap. Again, it's just saw the sun coming up there.
Yeah, it's lovely, isn't it?
It looks good. That is going to be so blinding. I'm not sure which whereabouts it's coming up from. It looked like it was going to be on the run down towards Test Rouge. I've not raced on this version of iRacing. Of Le Mans. I said iRacing. It's early. It's fine.
Early/late. It's late in the race. It's early in the morning.
Yeah, I've not. Oh, look at that. So yeah, it'll be down towards Test Rouge. There'll be a little bit on the run down. To be fair, considering the corners that you're attacking with that light, the Dunlop chicane is blocked by the track and the bridge. So really, the only one that you've got to really worry about is Tetridge, which is fine because it's not difficult at all, he says. I'm joking there, by the way. It's a very difficult corner.
I wonder if we can go on board and actually see what the drivers would be experiencing with this early morning sun. The boys at Motorsport Games will be listening. They're doing some very arty things right now. They're getting very French about this. They've obviously been watching Le Mans broadcasts, and they know that our TV director, Olivier Denis, likes a bit of art. And so they're kind of replicating with those static shots and the cars blasting through shots. So when we have the opportunity to go on board and kind of see the effect of that sun, be very interesting to see. Here we go, we're on board, going towards the Ford chicane. Now, people saying, oh, the clouds look a bit ominous. Absolutely not. That is exactly how the clouds look at Le Mans before the sun really catches them. Certainly not a blue sky day, totally. Certainly a bit of cloud in the sky, but I don't think we're expecting to see rain as the Bicolors car goes shooting past. By the way, just to say, on the left-hand side there's that sun now coming underneath the Dunlop Bridge. Isaac Price is keeping up with Rory McDuff. That gap is still only 4.6 seconds, so he's done a really good job on this stint.
He is doing very, very well.